Board meeting will now come to order. Denise, please call roll.
Oops. Lisa Fricke. Present. Patsy Ko-Johns.
Here.
Deborah Neary.
Here.
Robin Stevens.
Here.
Rachel Wise.
Here.
John Witzel.
Here. Patricia
Tim.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Commissioner Bloomstead.
Present.
All present.
Thank you, Denise. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted on the east wall of this room on the south side of the door. Live web streaming will be available through the State Board of Education website. Board members, please engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you are done speaking, and please turn off your cell phones. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 2nd and 3rd, 2019 State Board of Education meeting?
So move. Second.
Rachel, Patsy. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Denise, please call roll.
Maureen Nichols.
Yes.
Patricia Tim.
Abstain.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Robin Stevens.
Yes.
Deborah Neary.
Yes.
Patsy Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Lisa Fricke.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you, Denise. Commissioner Bloomstead, are there any recommended changes for today's agenda?
Yes, I actually have a couple. Quickly, I just wanted to recognize Tom Jacobson and members of, well, I guess all UNK working on their superintendent certificate. So welcome to the room, and Ken Nelson as well. He told me it was Tom's class, so that's why I said that way. So I wanted to make that note, and welcome to all guests actually today. So there are 3 different items that we're going to recommend for changes on the agenda. Item 8.6M from the consent agenda has been asked to be pulled for a separate conversation, so we'll do that at Maureen's request. And then 2 other items that we discussed yesterday, Rule 20 and 23, items 7.6A and 7.6B. We're actually, the committee recommended that we pull those from consideration so we can go back and do some further work on those concepts. And so those are the 3 items that I have for changes on the agenda today.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now move into public comment period. Oh. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Excuse me,
Second.
the agenda.
That's agenda. Lisa and Patsy. Lisa and Patsy. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Witzel.
Yes.
Wise.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Neary.
Yes.
Ko-Johns.
Yes.
Fricke.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. We will now have public comment period. This period of public comment is available for any person who wishes to address the State Board on subjects within its authority. Please note that public comment should be on topics related to the State Board's constitutional and statutory authority. Thanks to the members of the public who attended today, we have 1 request for a 10-minute special appearance. Dr. Joseph Owen Weichselman has requested and has been granted a special appearance to comment. Dr. Weichselman, you have 10 minutes, sir.
Good morning. I'm here today to provide you some background on how the social science team has worked to follow their mandate to revise the social studies standards as required by law. I'd also like to highlight a few of the many successes we are achieving in this work. I am Dr. Joseph Owen Weichselman, and I teach at Wayne State College, helping prepare the next generation of social studies teachers for the state of Nebraska. I teach the 3-semester American History Survey, plus upper-level courses in American History and the Social Studies Methods class for teachers. I also supervise student teachers in their last semester before they become teachers across the state of Nebraska. Although I've been living in Nebraska for the past 11 years, I was born in Kansas and grew up in Colorado. I taught high school social studies in Colorado and Wyoming, in both public and private, alternative and mainstream schools. Then I completed my doctorate in American history at the University of New Mexico, with an emphasis on the American West, American Indian history, and national park history. Although a Westerner, I do have historical links to Nebraska. My grandfather's grandmother, Augusta Brainerd, homesteaded land outside of Nebraska City after losing her husband at the Battle of Vicksburg in the Civil War. And her son, my grandfather's father, Charles Leslie Brainerd, graduated from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln in 1877. Last fall, I was asked to join the team working to revise Nebraska's social studies standards. As I care deeply about the quality of education Nebraskan students and all American students receive, I was happy to accept. Although in my life as a Baha'i, I've grown accustomed to working to achieve unanimity when making decisions in consultation, seldom have I seen such a devotion elsewhere to that noble goal. Working with the social studies team was one of those rare occasions. Not only have I found the team willing to work long hours for no remittance in order to perfect the standards, but I've been impressed time and time again by the efforts everyone has made to make the tough decisions unanimous ones. Nebraska can be grateful that they have such knowledgeable and caring professionals, giving of their time to help the next generation of Nebraskans understand the nation and the world they live in. In creating the first draft of the revised social studies standards, the team began by looking at concerns raised by teachers and others who work with the current standards. In this regard, the team found the various studies by the University of Nebraska useful and devoted a considerable amount of time to discussing these studies and what Nebraska law says about the teaching of social studies. Once we understood this foundation, we began our work of revising the standards to ensure that the needs of Nebraska students are met over the next decade. Some common concerns were that there were too many standards, that they were overwhelming, and that there was not enough time in school to teach them all. Therefore, we worked hard to reduce the number of standards and consolidate them whenever possible. We found this to be extremely difficult because by its very nature, the social studies curriculum must cover an enormous amount of information. We also found that many of the standards were necessary to fulfill the law as it applies to the social studies curriculum. Yet through our consultations, we found places that were redundant, combined ideas that were similar, and managed to make the standards more precise and readable, even if they were not shortened to any appreciable degree. I worked most closely with the history group and with the elementary subgroup within this group. I was concerned that the children of Nebraska were introduced to social studies in a positive way that would help them be enthusiastic about learning history, government, geography, and economics in the higher grades. As the lower grades focused the most on Native American history, I was also concerned that the standards covered it adequately. We kept to the model of having elementary students learn about their community, then widening their studies to the state, then the nation, and finally the world. This is a developmentally appropriate progression that aligns with their cognitive development. It ensures that they are not overwhelmed and can grasp the essential facts of the social sciences from a young age. It also allows teachers to create exciting lessons that will engage young minds in learning about their community, state, nation, and world. For 10 years now, I have assigned an oral history project for my history students at Wayne State College. Many of them have chosen to interview family members and the results have brought them an appreciation of the parts their families played in history. Asked to reflect on the project afterwards, most students have commented on the strong connections they made with their family and their increased appreciation for history now that they understood their family's role in it. For this reason, I was grateful to see the adoption of standards in the elementary grades that encourage students to ask their families questions, to get to know their personal history and make connections to the world beyond the classroom. As I am very familiar with the tribal histories of our nation and of the stories of Nebraska tribes in particular, I was glad to see the willingness of the committee to include examples from the Native American past with the indicators and to ensure their voice was heard as well. I believe that when our students know the accomplishments that American Indians had made both before and after Columbus, they will appreciate more fully their contributions today. In fact, the understanding of all peoples, Africans, Asians, Native peoples, and Europeans, that the social study standards emphasize across the disciplines will help our students appreciate the contributions all Americans have made to the vibrant nation we live in today. As the demographics of Nebraska change, it is important that we include the stories of all our citizens, both so they feel connected to their new home and so that Native Nebraskans can understand everyone's contributions to the state and to the nation. I spent many years in the classroom teaching students who had been marginalized by society. I encouraged them to see history as the story of many groups in America, including their particular group. It was up to me to interest them in history by making it their story as well. Therefore, I was pleased to see the enthusiasm with which the team approached the inclusion of multiple perspectives in the standards. I feel that this, more than anything else, will encourage all Nebraska students to embrace the study of history and to explore the many exceptional stories these many groups bring to the story of our country. In the end, the revisions we are suggesting in the 2019 social science standards are minor. Research showed that the 2012 standards were very good and that we just needed to tweak them. They did not need a wholesale revision, and the suggestions we are making are to build on their framework and to create a more inclusive study. Thank you for your time and for providing us your support.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much, sir. We will now move into our 5-minute public comment period. I would like to remind you to please sign in if you've not already done so. There are sign-in cards in the back table. We have 2 public comment cards turned in, and public will speak in the order the cards were received. Each member of the public will have 5 minutes to speak during the public comment period. I will announce the name of the speaker and the person who is next so they can be prepared to come forward. With that, our first public speaker is Jack Casher, followed up by Rachel Pinkerton. Welcome, sir.
I emailed all my comments to the board Tuesday morning, so you should at least have a chance to see something about what I'm going to say. So now I will say it. Good morning to you all. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts with you. I am Jack Casher. I have a PhD in theoretical physics and am Professor Emeritus of Physics at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where I taught physics and astronomy for 34 years. In addition to teaching at UNO, I spent 17 summers at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in Livermore, California, where I had a security clearance and worked on a number of classified projects. I also wrote thousands of lines of computer code and am quite knowledgeable about how computer models work. This is relevant since computer models are the basis for the negative predictions for the future due to climate change. The reason I am here today is because climate change will be taught in Nebraska schools starting next year. Since I retired 18 years ago, I have spent hundreds of hours studying the science behind climate change and am very familiar with both sides of this complicated topic. On the one hand, there are those who believe that humans are causing catastrophic global warming that will lead the planet to disastrous consequences. And others hold that global warming is not a crisis and is gently helping the planet in many ways. My main concern is that only one side of the debate will be taught in our schools, the disastrous one that the mainstream media, television, newspaper, and magazine articles and so forth, emphasizes, while neglecting the other side of the issue. Our children need to learn about the science behind both the positive and negative theories, not just the negative one that is in the public eye. As an example, consider a family watching television news report about a devastating hurricane. The father says, "Global warming is causing more and more wild weather." If his child has received proper instruction at school, he says, "Dad, that is not right. We learned in school that there are fewer hurricanes and tornadoes over the last 50 years, and they are not as strong." Without balanced coverage, the child would just nod his or her head for his father's remarks and believe that violent storms actually are increasing. That child could be your grandson or granddaughter. Similar examples can be given for droughts, forest fires, sea level rise, and so on, but we only have 5 minutes. Without a balanced presentation of global warming in our schools, our children will only learn the negative predictions. This brings us to the positive side of global warming. Since carbon dioxide is the main source of food for plants, its increase in the atmosphere, along with longer growing seasons, leads to more and healthier food production around the world. For example, world grain production, corn, wheat, and rice, has more than tripled since 1960, resulting in more food for everyone. In addition, it has been shown that carbon dioxide can increase plants' water use efficiency too, making them more resilient to drought, so that there's a double benefit in arid parts of the world. Also, more people die from cold weather than from warm weather. So a slight increase in temperature will save lives. I can list more examples, but the main point is that our children should be made aware of the positive aspects of the mild global warming that is happening. They will never get this if our teachers are not prepared to present the appropriate material. Final suggestion, I don't know how debate topics are chosen for our Nebraska high schools, but climate change would be an excellent one to bring out both sides of this relevant issue. Again, thank you once again for allowing me to present my concerns. I hope our children will receive a balanced presentation when they study climate change. I would be happy to help out, bring out this balance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Ms. Rachel Pinkerton, please.
Good morning. I'm Rachel Pinkerton. I'm honored and a little daunted to be following 2 PhDs this morning. But I do have an update from the Justice for Kids initiative that I've told you about. The first annual Good Kids Award ceremony was held on May 17th in Omaha at the PE 101 refreshments and open gym play rewarded children who attended. Honorees had their names displayed for all to see, along with the accomplishments cited in their nominations. Like you, I didn't have the pleasure of being present, maybe next year. I did receive multiple firsthand accounts of this event, and my favorite snippets: a little girl lit up when accepting her award to the song of her choice, Baby Shark. Hope that doesn't get stuck in your mind like it does in mine now when I say that. And second, another little boy nominated by his parents was recognized for his personal anti-bullying campaign. To children he has observed to be vulnerable on the playground, he offers, "Come stand by me if you're being picked on and I'll be your friend." People committed to the Justice for Kids initiative meet at the Malcolm X Visitor Center to strategize ways to encourage behavior that will set children up to succeed in school and in life. And we have another event in the works, and I look forward to keeping you posted. And there's still time to plan to attend the 4th Annual Voice Advocacy Center Scholarship Luncheon. President Witzel, I don't know if you have looked into booking a table at this event for board members who might be available and people from the department, but that would be much appreciated. I think it would be really special if Corey Epler, for example, could be there representing the Nebraska Reads Initiative. So if you can make it, come meet Dr. Dyslexia Dude, and he is going to be having a book signing after the luncheon from 1 to 2. And again, as I've mentioned before, and if you can make it out on my flyer, well, you can look online as well, of course. He's a PhD researcher who specializes on the intersection of race and giftedness and dyslexia. Very dynamic, successful fellow who himself didn't learn to read until he was 18 because it took that many years for somebody to identify that he had an issue that was a barrier to his reading. So I hope to see some of you there on July 20th, as you can see, at Creighton. And next, those of you who were here 3 years ago may recall I was celebrating my oldest daughter received her MD from the Med Center. That's Melissa and her husband and their 2 little girls. She's getting ready to wrap up her psychiatry residency, and she will be practicing at the Med Center. This is a slide from her PowerPoint. She gave grand rounds at Bergen Mercy. And yes, I was a very proud mom. It ended up being way up there on my highlights of my life. And if anybody wants an electronic copy of, get the name right, Melissa's Coordinated Specialty Care for First Episode Psychosis, let me know and I'll hook you up. And that is really a very promising and important area in mental health, because the diagnosis of schizophrenia is so devastating that that's a real disincentive to early identification, and yet it's turning out that there are early interventions that can have terrific effects. So I see that the second draft is up. I haven't had a lot of time to look at it, and I would greatly appreciate if the social studies standards could be presented in a horizontal format. So thank you very much. Enjoy your July break.
Thank you, Ms. Pinkerton. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for your comments. We will now proceed with today's agenda. 7.5, Commissioner's Appraisal Committee Report. Patricia Tim, is there a motion on item 7.5.A?
I move to approve the employment agreement as proposed between the State Board of Education and Matthew L. Bloomstead.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made by Pat and Patsy. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Nichols,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
In regards to AQuESTT Teaching and Learning Domain Committee, Lisa Fricky, is there a motion on item 7.6.A?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's one we pulled, sorry. Cancel that. And that also applies to 7.6B.
7.6.B. Correct. And that's it.
On 7.7, AQuESTT Student Success and Access Domain Committee, Patsy Co-Johns, is there a motion on item 7.7.A?
Yes, Mr. President, there is. I move to grant conditional approval under Rule 18 for the Youth Care and Beyond Learning Center to operate in the 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Second by Pat. Motion made by Patsy. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Wise,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Witzel.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. Patsy Co-Johns, is there a motion on item 7.7.b?
Yes. I move to adopt proposed revisions to Rule 11 with the substantive change to Section .006.03B noted in the hearing summary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nichols. Motion made by Patsy. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. For Strategic Planning, Performance, and Improvement Committee, Dr. Rachel Wise, is there a motion on item 7.9.a?
Yes.
Lisa.
I move to approve the accreditation for schools appearing on the accompanying list for 2019-2020 school year in accordance with the provisions of Rule 10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rachel Wise. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
8 yes.
Dr. Wise, is there a motion on item 7.9.b?
Yes. I move to approve the proposed modification request from Eustis Barnum Public Schools to modify the requirements found in Rule 10, Section 007.04A, in accordance with the modification provisions in Rule 10, Section 0130, oops, I can repeat that again, 013.05.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rachel Wise. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Neary,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Co-Johns.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. Dr. Wise, is there a motion on item 7.9.c?
Yes, I move to designate Santee Elementary and Santee High School as priority schools and require significant revision to Santee Middle School's priority school progress plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Pat. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Stevens,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. Dr. Wise, is there a motion on 7.9.d?
Yes, I move to remove the priority school designation for Loop County Elementary School.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Second by Pat? Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to commend Loop County for the work that they've done diligently in moving forward and really appreciate what they've brought forward towards their progress over the past 3 years.
Thank you, Dr. Wise. Great comments. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Wise,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Witzel.
Yes.
8 yes.
Dr. Wise, is there a motion on item 7.9.e?
Yes, I move to adopt the proposed revisions to the 2017 through 2026 strategic vision and direction.
Second.
Second by Pat. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Stevens,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Co-Johns.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you very much, Denise. We'll now move into the consent agenda. And I'll start out by saying, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item A.6.m?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Witzel,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Wise.
Yes.
8 yes.
I move to grant the Commissioner authority to contract with one or more of the contractors to be determined for continued services and continuing support for the Nebraska Priority Schools for the period of July 1/19 through June 30th, 2020.
Second?
Discussion?
Yes. I brought this forward to have just further discussion, because as I was reading through it, I had questions come to mind, and that dealt with, as I thought about Santee, first off, we had KLM with Luke County, and we have KLM working with Schuyler. And we have KLM working with Santee, and that was the high school. And now we've added the middle school and the elementary. So my question is, when we go out looking for contractors, will one contractor be utilized, for example, like at Santee, for all 3 schools? Or will there be one for the high school, because KLM's contract ends the end of this summer? Will one contractor be done for the high school? Will a different contractor be done for the middle school? Will a different contractor be done? I'm just looking for some thoughts on where you're thinking, Commissioner.
Yeah, and I'll give a little bit of background, and it is fairly unique. Since the last board meeting, if you remember, we had some conversations about how to kind of try to expand our capacities and think about using potentially several different consultants in different situations. And the unique part of this is, we're kind of through the first round, and this is going to become pretty permanent part of our operation. And I think we've seen that in our processes. Obviously, as Loup County now is voted to come off of that, we're trying to think how we scale that up. And one of the ways that includes actually with this RFP allows us to kind of search for other potential vendors that might be used for appropriate circumstances. Granted, we don't know what all those appropriate circumstances might be. There's, just as you mentioned in a Santee, adding to that, we want to be able to have a pool of folks to be able to select from, so we can get the right kind of consultants in place for the needs that schools have. And so that includes all of our current priority school work as well. So we can look at that and say, hey, look, a given school might have this type of need or that type of need. And this expands that pool of opportunities. So our team, as they build plans with schools, might have a selection of people that they're able to use for that. We're in the middle of the RFP yet, so that's a little bit of our challenge, I think, on this particular item, because we have 2 things that we have to be able to address for you during the course of the summer. Number one, we actually have to put a plan together to bring back to you in August, and it's hard to put a plan together if we don't know who's going to work on elements of that plan. And to be able to, we've used this process really to be able to, and I don't know, since we're in the middle of the RFP, I don't know how many different vendors, but I expect multiple ones to be available to us. And I would say long-term also, this is just probably the first iterative approach of that. Long-term, what I would imagine is trying to consistently have a process where we're scanning the field for who might be available for particular work and working with schools. It needs improvement as well as priority schools to make sure that we have qualified folks and can build that capacity. My last note really ties to the conversation we had around the appropriation side of this. Ideally, in the long run, some of that capacity is able to be built inside of the agency with staff positions. And because of the appropriations process and how the budget passed at the state level, we weren't granted additional authority to use that to hire staff positions. So we felt like this is the next best way to try to expand that capacity.
Rachel?
Yeah, Commissioner, I just would like to add on those comments a little bit. And I believe Santee will be coming back with a revised progress plan to the committee, the Strategic Planning and Performance Committee, and then to the full board to include then the elementary and the high school as we move forward. And it might be, as we move forward, advantageous to bring some of those discussions to that committee to be looking somewhat hand in hand with the consulting role that's happening with the various, as we continue to expand with those various priority schools and their needs.
Yeah, I do think as we kind of, especially that will be a new one, but as we try to think about how we build this process for the long haul, this at least is one attempt, and we'll probably get better at how that might function and work. But it's our first attempt to try to figure out how we can build additional capacities around each of our schools. So, and I agree, it'll come back to the committee for a lot of conversation.
Patsy?
So, do you see in the very near future that we will be serving more than 3 priority schools?
Well, actually, in the very near future, because you actually just approved it in the technical terms,
Well,
we
yeah.
actually have 3 from Santee. It gives us the ability to do that, and I also will highlight a bit of the other, the other work going on. Obviously, we have comprehensive support and improvement schools underneath the ESSA plan as well. When we originally constructed that plan, we had thought about tying those things specifically together, right? That they would be one and the same. And as the plan developed, as our work with the U.S. Department of Ed, that's not exactly how it happened. But we see synergy between the work that happens with CSI schools and priority schools. We see an opportunity really to hopefully use that to build additional capacities that identify the right strategies in given schools and given circumstances to make a particular difference. I think priority school is one of our strongest powers other than accreditation itself, right? So as we dive into Rule 10, it's going to let us have a little bit more of a policy and a permanent policy direction for how the integration of that work. We're not limited any longer to up to 3, right? It's at least 3, so we have to maintain at least 3. But it does give us a little more flexibility on, schools that we might identify as needing some additional type of support through a priority process.
I guess I was looking at Santee as a system as rather than the individual schools, but.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of the technical part of that they're counted as 3 separate schools for our purposes, yes.
Lisa?
Good to know.
I appreciate hearing all this information. What I particularly am appreciative of is the idea that, in the near future, we're looking at doing this within our staff, a lot of this, and so I really am glad to hear that that's coming down in the near future. I think it will save money, and I think we have an excellent staff in place to maybe be trained to do some of this, so thank you for that.
Robin Stevens?
First of all, thanks to Vice President Nichols for bringing up this question, because it really is going to need a lot of discussion. And then thanks for what I think I hear you saying, is that one size doesn't necessarily fit all. And I think in this case, it's definitely true. I just look forward to the continued discussion as we look at the contractor and who that might be. Again, I'm just really concerned that we don't just do the same thing that we've done. Thank goodness things have been successful with Loup County. It looks like Schuyler's well on its way, but this is a different situation. And again, I appreciate the willingness to bring it up.
And the success of Druid Hill that is now off the priority. Two quick questions or comments. One might be to bring an update to the CSI back to the board sometime in or committee in August or September. The other, Commissioner, if you could go again back through our personnel challenge, because I don't think we can hear that enough to understand that we have such a limitation, statutory limitation on hiring.
Yeah, I'll try to. I try to do this justice. Just the budget process itself includes that the agency receives budget authority from the legislature, and then obviously, if there's truly dollars appropriated, we have those dollars available to us. Sometimes we have those dollars available to us from federal sources, sometimes from grant sources, sometimes from state sources, state general fund sources. But there is this kind of unique part of the state budgeting process that tells agencies what their salary limitation is. And our salary limitation, we are essentially right up against it. Internally, we call it PSL. So if you ever heard that term, that's personnel service limitation. But that's something that's actually monitored very closely. Well, we are essentially at our cap, and have been essentially since I came to the agency, at our cap on how many staff we can have. So we've started a process where we try to reshape positions and rethink positions, but we're kind of at the end of that ability. We've also, as we've had turnover and things, we've used vacancies to kind of create different types of positions. Well, our turnover has actually slowed down considerably, so that puts us up against a window of time. So we've actually created several new types of positions. Many of you, I mean, even the structure of the agency itself looks different today than when I first started. But this is a real limitation on how we might take these funds. And we had proposed it in our budget this year that we would actually create 5 different positions to work on essentially priority schools and needs improvement schools. We were not granted neither money nor the ability to spend it on salaries inside the agency. So I do believe that we're going to have to take this to a policy conversation at the legislature, different than just and I can't blame the folks in appropriations. I've used the line, it's a bit like telling a carpenter they can't use their hammer anymore. I mean, that's one of the hammers that they have, and I have to make a different type of case. We have to make a different type of case of why this is important. I will say, though, we've actually increased our staff capacity around this particular work. We've been lucky to have Lane Carr working as our accountability person. That was a position kind of given to us in that process, and he's actually our third in that time frame to be in that position. So we've been lucky to have that. Now Dr. Shirley Vargas is just accepted a new position. She, of course, had joined us for a year and became a familiar face here, and we're not letting her go, as that turns out. No, we're very pleased because she's going to be leading a lot of this work in particular, and I would actually compliment the two of them on this idea around the RFP to build our processes so they can have flexibility. And I credit Dr. Friesen as well in her leadership to think about how do we start building this capacity. We were building a new model when we started this, right? It was brand new. And so now I think we've increased our capacities, but we have much more to do to really be effective. And that's the hope of this. It's probably not in the end exactly how we'll continue to do it, but we needed to step somewhere given the constraints that we had. So.
Any other comments, concerns? Go ahead, Mo.
My recollection is the amount set aside for this was $350,000, so that would be divided. If there were more than one vendor, that money would be divided appropriately for what the need was.
Yeah, my hope is to actually be able to be in this process. Again, timing's a little bit unique right now. Normally we might have, if we had our regular kind of monthly meetings. I just want to be able to make sure we have the authority to move forward if we do identify some contractors before the August timeframe that can do some of this work. And we'll bring that back and say, hey, look, here's the rest of the plan for us to be able to implement those plans successfully, so.
First off, I appreciate everyone's conversation. I had no idea that this would generate so much conversation because I hadn't really mentioned it to anyone. But I'd also like to just throw in there the incredible amount of work that our ESUs have done with each of these schools that have been on the priority list. I really appreciate their expertise.
Can I add one point of clarification too? Underneath the RFP process, certainly we're looking to potentially vendors to do that work, but we always have the ability to tap into those partnerships, and we'll continue to have that as part of our plan going forward. So ESUs and actually school districts themselves. In fact, next week I hope to have a conversation with my superintendent's advisory committee about their willingness to think about how to help us in this circumstance where we have limited staff capacity, because our intention is really to build as much of this capacity inside the state, and there's actually skills and talents that we have to have some processes to be able to do that. So this is just one part of that broader strategy. I want you to understand that.
Lisa?
I have just one question for you, Commissioner. With the PSL limitations, when the legislature creates a mandate where we have to hire, like I'm thinking of the Reading Act consultant for the state, and I think there's one or two other things in the past couple of years where we were required to do that, and then we have a limitation on what we can spend on hiring. How does that work?
Not well for me. No. I'll describe a bit of that process. So sometimes they put in a mandate for us to do something, and sometimes that specifically includes a staff person, and sometimes actually that specifically includes funding for a staff person.
Yeah.
In recent times, they've said do this work without necessarily giving us the appropriation for staff, and that the Reading Improvement Act is one of those. It's not so much that there was specifically a mandate for the position that lent itself to the staffing, and it was a unique moment in time where we were actually being cut, and then they gave us less of a cut, and that's how we funded the position with negative $25,000. I think we got that position hired. I don't know how, but what I'm getting at on that front is that process is it's a bit of a delicate dance constantly in that appropriation process. Our job then, we try to figure out what's your real intent, where do we have to do some of our priorities internally. We shifted to make it possible that we would have resources for the reading improvement specialist, the reading specialist, as part of that process. That means other things weren't going to be done though, right? And so it's complex for us, but not every time that they tell us thou shalt do something is there a resource associated with that.
Betsy?
When will that be impossible?
I actually think we're right there, right? We've done a lot in the last couple of years that we're kind of at a severe bend point, maybe not break, but a severe bend point, yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking about, and I don't know if we've discussed it or not, but we have a couple of schools who've achieved success. And I was wondering with some sort of liaison system that we could develop a process or a protocol where they became mentors for schools near them to lead them in being better, more successful schools. Just an idea I had that might save money, might make the process a little bit more open.
And we actually have done, they present at conferences and they work with other schools. So, there's some really great things happening on that front.
Rachel?
Just one more comment, and Pat Tim could probably give us a little more view, but I would say at least 8 to 10 years we have been behind in the funding need, and it's it just has been continual. And so I think we're already past that. And I think we have to give the department staff as a whole, the commissioner and the staff, they keep doing more with less. Again, that is a piece. And Commissioner, I think just for, the audience here and there, the percentage, it to me is always fascinating, the percentage of the budget that is state versus federal funding from grants and other kinds of things.
Yeah,
If
so
you
I
could share
mean,
that.
we're roughly 70% federally funded, somewhere in that range, from a staffing perspective. And that's not all sources, but for operations purposes, roughly 70%. So.
Thank you all very much. Just a reminder, we did have a motion, we did have a second, and I'll read if you will, the motion again is grant the commissioner authority to contract with one or more contractors to be determined for continued services and continuing support for the Nebraska's priority schools for the period of July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Denise, please call roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Cojones.
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. And that completes all of our action items, and we're going to take a break until 10 o'clock, where we'll convene for the hearings. Convene, and now the board will take up hearings. We'll start out with 5.1, hearing an NDE case number 19-03, Commissioner of Education versus Madison Brown. The State of Education is prepared to consider the disposition of case number 19-03, Commissioner versus Madison Brown. The board has been provided with the record of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission's proceedings containing the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation of the commission. All of the pleadings, exhibits, and written scripts of the NPPC hearing are marked by the State Board as Exhibit 1. The notice of disposition hearing and the certified return receipts are marked as Exhibit 2. If there is no objection, these will be received. We will first hear from a representative from the NPPC, then the petitioner, and finally a representative of the respondent. Each representative will be given 10 minutes to present his or her statements. The board will not receive any additional evidence or testimony beyond the contained in Exhibits 1 and 2. Will the representative of the Professional Practices Commission please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Kelly Mothersbaugh, and I'm here representing the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission on the matter of Matthew L. Bloomstead versus Madison Brown. The commission found during the 2017-2018 school year, the respondent violated school policy regarding professional boundaries between employees and students by engaging in frequent contact with students through the use of social media, having students in her home, having students spend the night in her home, and consuming alcohol with students present at social events. The commission deliberated on the facts before it and recommends to the State Board of Education the respondent's certificate be revoked for a period of 1 year.
Does the board have any questions? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much. Will the petitioner please come forward and be seated and identify yourself?
Morning, I am Sarah Hulek, 301 Centennial Mall South, 6th floor in Lincoln, Nebraska, here on behalf of the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Matt Bloomstead, respondent in this matter. I have tremendous respect for the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission and their recommendation. However, in this case, I believe the precedent and the facts in these circumstances warrant a more substantial revocation. At the hearing, I had listed several prior precedent with cases with similar circumstances, and I had asked for a 5-year revocation at that time. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does the board have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the respondent please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
Hi, I'm Madison Brown, and what else did you ask? Sorry.
You have 10 minutes to present a statement.
I just am truly, sincerely sorry for having you meet on my behalf and for the events that have brought me and you guys here today. It's really been a stressful year, just the ups and downs and the not knowings, and it's weighed on my heart, and I feel extremely sorry for this, and I know that I'm a good educator, and I know that this doesn't define who I am as a person. I'm just asking, as you deliberate today, to think about how I have done in the classroom and recommendations from other educators that I've provided and brought forth. And just throughout this year, I have had a mentor teacher and mentor meetings, met with my new principal on a frequent basis just to make sure that we're all on the same page in communication with what's going on with this. And I know these are mistakes that should never have been made, and I just have learned tremendously throughout this year of what line I need to have and what boundaries I need to place. I need to have school, and that's it. And I've just grown as a person through these mistakes, and I just ask that you, as you deliberate, think about how I've went a whole year this year teaching and worked day in and day out to create a lasting impact on my students with all of this going on, and a smile on my face because I do love education and I do love students and making sure that I am in the classroom doing what I need to be doing. And as I said, throughout this past year, I have had a mentor teacher and someone I can talk to about this, as well as my principal. And it pains me to know that I had to leave a job I loved in Pender because of what I've done, and it would just break me to have to leave another job that I love because of these mistakes. So I just asked for a second chance, and I understand what you have to do because, yeah, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. We, board members, may have an opportunity to ask you questions.
Okay.
Board members, go ahead, Lou.
As I was reading through the testimony, one of the things that stuck out to me was that you had noted that you did not know about these boundaries. The administration had never informed you. I found that very surprising because as an educator, I knew well ahead of time, before I ever stepped foot into student teaching, where my boundaries were. And so I just found that interesting that you, I don't remember the exact words, but that the administration had never shared with you the do's and don'ts of what you could or couldn't do with students.
And maybe the wording with that was wrong. What I meant by that was just the communication with my administration and myself. Yes, I should have known better myself. Sometimes you're put into situations, and sometimes having that outside force to give you advice and helping you out through things is helpful. I should have known on my own, and I do now. I know my exact boundaries and what line I am never going to cross again. And that's something that I've learned tremendously throughout this past year. I don't blame my administration. I just, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you for being here today.
Yeah.
I just had a question.
Can you turn your mic back on?
Oh, I just turned it off. I must have had it on. Sorry. When I first started teaching, I not only received a student handbook, but I received a teacher handbook with guidance for first-year teachers. Did you receive something like that at the beginning of teaching at Pender?
Yes, I received a handbook.
And did that handbook cover some of the issues that came up in your case?
Yeah, some of them. And most of this was regarding when I coached dance. So, because I taught first grade, and when I was coaching dance, there was a new athletic director, and the old coach that coached dance previously, I was told not to contact because it kind of was in rough terms of how she left. So just in regards to coaching and those guidelines, there was no handbook as to that.
Thank you.
And yet, Mr. Stevens.
Just a question for legal counsel. What are my limitations as far as questions here in open session as compared to closed session?
Just keep it to the record. Keep your questions to whatever's in the record.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Brown, you're excused.
Thank you.
We'll make a decision on this within the next couple of hours.
Okay. And I just have a question. When will I receive like documentation of the decision?
That will likely be mailed out today.
Okay.
Or Monday.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This proceeding is now closed. The board will make a determination on this at a later time this morning or early afternoon. With that, we'll go on to hearing an NDE case number 19-04, Commissioner versus Mark Cott Leslie Donley. Mark Cock. The State of Education is prepared to consider the disposition of case number 19-04, Commissioner versus Mark Cock. Board has been Cook. The board has been provided with record of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission's proceedings containing the findings of facts, conclusions of law, and recommendation of the commission. All of the pleadings, exhibits, and written transcripts of the NPPC hearing are marked by the State Board as Exhibit 1. The notice of disposition, hearing, and the certified return receipts are marked as Exhibit 2. If there is no objection, these will be received. We will first hear from the representative of the NPPC, then the petitioner, and finally the representative of the respondent. Each representative will be given 10 minutes to present his or her statements. The board will not receive any additional evidence or testimony beyond the contained in Exhibits 1 and 2. Will a representative of the Professional Practices Commission please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself.
Good morning again. I'm Kelly Mothersbaugh. I'm here representing the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission on the matter of Matthew L. Bloomstead versus Mark Cook. On April 9th, 2018, the respondent was under the influence of alcohol on Boyd County Public School grounds while school was in session. The district superintendent administered a breathalyzer test to the respondent, who tested positive for alcohol with a .019 blood alcohol concentration, or BAC. The respondent admitted to having consumed alcohol the night before, on April 8th, 2018, and to abusing alcohol at home on a regular basis. The commission deliberated on the facts before it and recommends to the State Board of Education the respondent's certificate be revoked for a period of 1 year.
Do any board members have any questions from the commission? Thank you, ma'am. Will the petitioner please come forward and be seated? And identify yourself.
My name is Sarah Hulak, 301 Centennial Mall South, 6th floor, Lincoln, Nebraska, here on behalf of the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Matt Bloomstead. We are in support of the Professional Practices Commission's recommendation, as it is consistent with prior precedent, and the facts and record warrant the recommended sanction in this matter, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do any board members have any questions? Seeing and hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Will the respondent please come forward, be seated, and identify yourself?
I'm Mark Cook.
Mr. Cook, welcome, sir. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Okay. Like I said at the other hearing, obviously I did have a problem with abusing alcohol. I took it upon myself during the summer to check myself into a treatment facility. And then I decided to voluntarily take the year off so I could work on myself. So I sat out this last year, didn't apply for any positions. And then of course this coming up year, probably won't be applying either. So I guess I pretty much, what I would call it, sat myself out instead of going forward, looking for jobs and things like that. So this will be his second year. I mean, if this would happen, revocation, either way, because, you know, in the time it is right now, there won't be really job openings, so it'll be the 2 years, and then if it's revoked, then of course, with this timing, it'll be 3 years total that I would have sat out of education. So I would like the board to kind of consider that I pretty much suspended myself to better myself. And I'd just like to have you guys take that into consideration, that I try to do everything I can to become better. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Thank you, sir. The board now will ask you questions, sir.
Okay.
Mo?
I appreciate you being here. I know it's hard. You put yourself into treatment. You checked yourself in. How long did that treatment last? Are you continuing? Is it ongoing?
It was 35 days, 35-day treatment out of Columbus. And no, it's not ongoing anymore. But I actually stopped going to AA meetings about November, December, somewhere around there, because I felt like I was more under control at this time. Probably need to start going back, you know, because we all know that it's a disease that needs to constantly be monitored and worked on, I guess.
Thank you.
Any other board members, questions? Seeing and hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Appreciate your time, sir. And we'll get back with you in the next maybe hour or two in regards to the decision. This proceeding is now closed. The board will make a determination during the next couple of hours. Vice President Nichols, is there a motion to go into executive session?
Yes, I move that the state board go into executive session to deliberate and receive legal advice from legal counsel on contested cases.
Is there a second? Second by Stevens. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Denise, please call roll.
Fricke?
Yes.
Co-Johns?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Wise?
Yes.
Wetzel?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Denise. The board will now go into executive session only to deliberate and receive legal advice from legal counsel and on contested cases. Thank you. convene. Is there a motion to come out of executive session, Vice President Nichols?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Fricky?
Yes.
Kojons?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Wise?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you very much, Denise. We will now move forward. In considering the PPC's recommended decision on NDE case number 19-3, Commissioner versus Madison Brown. Mo, is there a motion on item 7.1 in NDE case 19-3?
Yes. I move in Commissioner versus Madison Brown, NDE case number 19-03, that this board adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission. However, this board has determined that a 3-year revocation in light of the record is appropriate. Also, I move that this board adopt the final order proposed by legal counsel.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Kojons?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Wise?
No.
Neary?
Yes.
Fricky?
Yes.
7 yes, 1 no.
Thank you very much, Denise. We'll move on to consider the PPC's recommended decision in NDE case number 19-04, Commissioner versus Mark Cook. Mr. Stevens, is there a motion on item 7.2 in NDE case number 19-04?
Yes.
Do we have it?
I move in Commissioner versus Mark Cook, NDE case number 1904, that this board adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission revoking respondent's administrative certificate for 1 year and to adopt the final order proposed by legal counsel.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Patsy. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Wise?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Kojons?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fricky?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leslie.
You're welcome.
We will now move on to special presentations and discussions. Commissioner, did you want to present our next briefer? Do you want me to?
I'm going to declare myself out of order.
No, no.
I can't find the right page.
You want me to do it now?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. 9-1 is informed the State Board of Activities within the Nebraska Leadership and Learning Network, an upcoming summit on June 12th through the 13th in Kearney. Kim Snyder and Kelly Heinke will provide a brief presentation on the Nebraska Leadership and Learning Network and the upcoming summit, June 12th through the 13th in Kearney. Welcome, Kim and Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kim Snyder. I'm Director of Teacher and Principal Support statewide. And
Hi, good morning. I'm Kelly Heineke, and I am the Nebraska Leadership and Learning Network Specialist.
I'm sorry if I looked confused when I came up here.
Yeah.
The June summit is not related, it's related to the other half of what we do. So the June 12th and 13th summit that you heard on the tail end of what Mr. Witzel said is not with what we're going to talk about
Very
today.
good. Thank
So,
you.
sorry about that. We are here to talk about the Nebraska Leadership and Learning Network. I have been before you in the past to talk about the ELLC, which is the ESSA Leadership and Learning Community, and that's where I talked to you about the Wallace Foundation supporting 10 states to do the great work of determining how to spend ESSA funding to support principal support across the state of Nebraska. And so that's what Kelly and I have been working with for quite a while. So I'll let Kelly talk a little bit about the NLLN.
Yes, thank you. So basically what this project is it's been going on for about 3 years, and I joined in February to lead and do this work with Kim. And what we are creating is a statewide process that's ensuring equity-driven leadership support in schools receiving comprehensive support and improvement. So that is the NLLN, and we wanted to share a little bit with you about who is the NLLN. And so the work that Lane Carr and Shirley Vargas were doing with the CSI workshops, this is a continuation of that work in some ways. And we through that work, developed a series of readiness factors to invite a small group of schools and districts to participate in this network, with the idea that Kim and I wouldn't have the capacity to work with all 27 schools. And so we created a rubric of sorts that had 12 readiness factors, some of which were things like using data to drive instruction, the superintendents and principals would have a good relationship, things like that. And then we shared those readiness factors with a number of folks here at NDE, the ESUs, and some other organizations. And we ran through all 27 schools through those readiness factors, and the ones that rose to the top are the ones that you're seeing on the slide here. And those are the schools and districts that we've actually invited to participate in the network this year. So we are calling the superintendents and principals a design team. I'm seeing some nodding, because they are actually going to be designing the network themselves. And we really want this to be about design-inspired leadership. And so the schools, as you see, are Bayard Elementary School, and we have Winnebago Middle School and High School. It's the same principal, so 2 schools with that district, and then Walnut Middle School in Grand Island, and Juanita Palisade Middle School. So those are the folks that are coming together to actually create this network of support, but they're not doing it on their own. And so we did a lot of outreach, and we worked pretty diligently to build some relationships, and me being new to NDE, I wanted to get to know as many folks as possible. And so what we did was reached out to every ESU administrator and just shared the information and asked if they would be willing and able to commit and have the capacity to commit one person from each ESU to be a part of this process, which was a little tricky because we didn't really know what that was going to look like, and we didn't know what the commitments were going to be like. So most of the ESUs were able to do that. And so we have someone from almost every ESU participating. We have a couple of folks from the NDE there, aside from Kim and myself, and then the organizations. We have NCSA. We have 2 higher education institutions there, UNL and Wayne State. And then we also have the Wallace Foundation consultants that are participating. And they are coming together 10 more times. So we've already had 2 convenings in a variety of different ways. So some are Zoom meetings, some are face-to-face, and again, the design teams were the ones that said we would like to meet at least once a month, and these are sort of the modalities that we would want to be meeting in. And so here are sort of the objectives for the work moving forward. We didn't want this to be one more thing. We didn't want this to be an additional lift for schools, and so we are really working to align it with the school improvement, accountability, and accreditation work that's already going on in schools. But our aim is really to develop and implement this network of support, and so it's really about building a community of folks that are going to be helping to design and then further support as we move forward, support these schools, with the ultimate goal really of developing and strengthening the leaders' knowledge, skills, and mindsets to affect change moving forward.
So if you take a look at the goals, we know that this is a pretty heavy lift if we're talking support statewide. Eventually, we'd like to have this go for all needs improvement schools in Nebraska, but like she said, right now we're just working with a few of the CSI schools that have been receiving CSI. So in year 1, you can see that there are 2 goals. The first one is that we need to support these folks that are on the design team as they build their equity-driven leadership capacity. That's one of our main goals, is to be there to support them, facilitate some opportunities for them to grow in their knowledge and their ability to lead. But at the same time, as we facilitate this for the first year, we need to be able to create an environment that we're calling a held environment, that is an environment where they can not be successful maybe and be vulnerable and say some things that they need to say while surrounded by the participants from the ESUs and NCSA, because we think about all the wonderful leadership supports that are already in the state of Nebraska. This is the first time that we know of that all of those players have been brought together in one room to surround these 8 administrators and hear from them what it means to be a principal and or a principal supervisor in the state of Nebraska, and what we can do as educational leaders of organizations that are there to support them, and what's our part going to look like. So that's the first year, sorry, and then the second, after year 1, we need to be able to scale it out to the other needs improvement schools. So we have a graphic here. This does not include all of the educational communities at all, but these are the players that we have at the table. We've got the system of support that we're developing. Within a year, that system of support has to be in place that will hold all of our puzzle pieces together so that it's consistent as we scale this across the state. We all have to figure out, even the NDE, we have to figure out what our capacity is to support these schools and these principals, and what our supports are even going to look like. We're asking the ESUs to do the same thing. We're asking NCSA to do the same thing, higher ed. That's what we're doing this year, and it's hugely exciting. And like she said, we've met twice and have had some wonderful conversations, and some things are starting to bubble up, so it's good.
And so we had some very ambitious outcomes for the year, and after our first convening, we tweaked them just a little bit, just based on some feedback that we had from the participants. And so we're hoping that we can help the folks present draw explicit connections between leading for equity and for school improvement. So equity is a theme throughout all of the convenings. We're working, as we said, to build capacity around equity-driven leadership. We want to help these leaders develop the knowledge, skills, and mindsets is a big piece of this, to use design thinking methodologies, so a little bit outside of the box thinking, to affect change in context. So it's asking them to shift from kind of a fix-it mentality maybe, where school leaders are always trying to put out fires all the time, to looking at more of a design-inspired thinking mentality. So that mindset shift is what we're hoping for. We're hoping to create cross-organizational systems of support, so that's what Kim was talking about, all of those communities coming together. And one of the key pieces here, and this is something that we've been driving really hard at in our first 2 convenings, is building that trust in the interdependencies among the team members. And so we've always included that in survey data, and we've gotten really good feedback from the participants that we are indeed actually building that trust. Only after 2 convenings, so we're really excited about that. The last one was the new one that we added in, and we did a lot of talking, and we've been traveling a lot lately, Kim and I, and we're hearing a lot about how essential communication is, and we understand that. We've created a communication plan, but what we really wanted to make sure was that we could create a sustainable system of communication, regardless of any organizational changes that are happening in NDE or in the other organizations or the schools themselves, so that that system of communication will continue on throughout. And I think that's the last slide. Yep.
That's the NLLM.
That's it.
Thank you.
And I just might add a couple of points. I mean, as I mentioned, the national work, we've somewhat modeled it with how other states are also taking national work and modeling it at a local level. But the importance of investing in local leadership is key to all of our work. And so this is one way we're trying to support and reach out and support, especially needs improvement school settings, and begin to build some capacity to help in the long run. So.
I do want to say one more thing, and it might answer a question or two that might come up. We talked about other educational organizations being involved. We wanted to make sure that we kept this first group fairly small, so that's why we landed on higher ed, NCSA, ESUs. But within 1 week after each one of our meetings, we have an invite-only webinar, a Zoom meeting, and we have several other educational groups that are coming in. We summarize briefly what the feedback was that we got from the convening, and then we listen to them as they give us their feedback. So an example would be in NSEA. Maddie attends that, got the Urban League, OPS, LPS, they're there. We get the feedback from them. So we definitely are partnering with other groups. We just don't have them at the initial convenings. So just wanted to throw that out there.
This year, Maureen and Lisa and I attended a meeting, and one of actually it ended up being a session that was a working session, and the two presenters there were past principals, and the question proposed to them is, what is the one thing that we need to do to improve education? They were talking about the United States. Of course, we were all thinking about Nebraska. And the first person stepped forward and he said, well, this is probably not what I should say in front of a room full of administrators and teachers. And what he said is, we need to teach principals how to have better leadership skills, and we need to find ways to support them so that when they walk into leadership positions, they are skilled in all the areas that they'll be required to act in. And the second guy, the whole entire meeting then circled around that. And I thought it was so courageous of these two past principals to say that. And they were principals of excellence themselves, but they didn't think they were as good as they could have been.
Right.
And so this is exciting
Yes.
and all of that, but it is so necessary and so courageous. So kudos to you for taking the big steps to do this. And I'm glad we as NDEA are supporting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, yeah. First of all, listening to Patsy, and it's great to hear. Turn your mic back on. Maureen, Patsy and Maureen and Lisa were all involved, at least in some of this planning, is that correct?
We were involved in listening, and then we were involved, in listening and agreeing, and then hoping to be a part of it somehow.
Yeah. Then my question to you guys, were there priority school principals involved in this planning?
I don't know what the, in the planning of it, I'm thinking about our ELLC group. The ELLC group is our advisory board, supported by the Wallace Foundation, and that group was created prior to the priority school process, I believe.
It's about
Is
the
that
same time.
About the
So
same time?
The principal from Druid Hill had been involved, and I don't mean
Oh.
in the immediate planning on this work, but had been involved in some of the national work, and actually some of our work generally had been looked at nationally as well. So it has reflected our priority school work too.
We always talk about involving people who are most affected by a decision. And I just think that that's crucial. I mean, it's great to hear you say, well, it's not going to add any more work. It's going to be connected with your school improvement program. It's going to be connected with all the things that you listed up there real early. And so I think that's great. I just want to make sure that the priority school principals think this is great too.
Sure. And we are
Because if
working-
they don't, I think we all know what will happen.
Yep.
It'll hit a brick wall, and then, yeah, not good response. I'm really excited to hear that you guys were there and that you heard good things. I'm really pleased to hear that. I just want you to make sure that those principals of those priority schools are aware of this before we really jump in both feet. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Rachel.
I think when we talk about the principal aspect and leadership, we've got to do the same for superintendent, because just as your comments were made, if a principal doesn't have a mentor, if an evaluation process, the person doing that evaluation process, even in our priority schools, our lessons have been learned that you have to engage superintendent and you have to engage, in some cases, board, depending upon what it is. But when we do principal work, if we're not really thinking about what that means relative to superintendent role, then I think we're missing a connect there that's really critical.
Thank you.
And I might just add, because Kim slipped it in, and you might not have heard it, but she said principal supervisors. And so that's actually the intention on this particular work. And obviously, when we work statewide, that might look different in different places, but that's very much the intention.
And we do have both the schools that you saw listed there, they had to commit that both their principal and the superintendent would be a part of this. So with Grand Island Middle, it is the principal and the principal supervisor, not the superintendent, but the other three, principal and superintendent, we wouldn't let them do it one or the other, so.
Deb Neary, did you have a question, ma'am?
Two questions. One, of the ESUs, is the Omaha ESU involved?
You know, that was, the initial intent was yes. But you will, neither LPS nor OPS chose to be a part of the initial convenings and for various reasons. But we are, OPS and LPS are both involved in the webinars that we hold after each convening. And also we are working individually to be a part, shadow in their buildings so that we can understand their leadership capacities, because it's different than the rural schools. And so that's set up for this summer and next fall.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
And then my second question, and I think I know what this means, but I want to be able to articulate it accurately to other people. In your year one outcomes, you talked about equity-driven leadership. Will you help me better understand that, please?
We are, she mentioned design-inspired leadership as well.
Okay.
We are engaging in conversations with these folks that will allow them to approach problem solving in ways that they haven't approached it before. And in that process, that design-inspired process, they are using the lens of looking at what is equitable for each student. And so when we talk about equity-driven leadership, we talk about stepping back, don't necessarily solve problems the way we have before, although sometimes that's very necessary, but also have a lens where you can step back and say, all right, what does equity mean in this building, in this situation right now? So those are the conversations that we're having with them.
Awesome, thank you.
Patsy?
And that very much lines up with the work of the board, with their equity policy and their equity lens. So that's good.
Lisa?
Wow, I'm excited about this program, and I appreciate all my colleagues' comments. And I appreciate the last bullet that you had about sustainable communication. And this is a one-year kind of guidance, is that correct?
Well, so we know that Kelly and I have the capacity to facilitate these meetings, these convenings, 1 year. So we have 1 year to support this design team as they talk and we learn from them. And we have 1 year for the ESUs, the NCSA, higher ed, the NDE. We have 1 year to figure out how we can all figure out what our own puzzle pieces look together, and we put that puzzle together. That's that we have 1 year. So we have said by the end of the next school year, we will have that figured out, and it's a heavy lift, but we have to. These kids can't wait, these principals can't wait, superintendents can't wait. It has to happen. And like we said, there are so many wonderful things that each individual organization is doing, but what can we do together to make it consistent and collaborate? And so
The reason I asked that, because that's what I understood for 1 year, but when you talked about sustainable communication, I was hoping that it periodically would happen beyond that. Is that what you're talking about, the sustainable communication beyond the 1 year of guidance?
Sure. Kelly and I will always be here, or somebody here at the NDE will always need to help facilitate that. So we anticipate that part of our puzzle piece, when we put it together, will be just that, where we will support the communication going forward with support from the other organizations. But we're anticipating, as we're learning what our NDE's puzzle piece is going to look like, is that we'll be a large part of that.
I appreciate that ongoing communication, so thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
I heard right, NCSA
Yes.
Did I hear you mention them
Yes.
as the other organization, NSEA also?
Yep. Mhm.
All right, thank
Yep,
you.
And the School Board Association as well. I
Thank
forgot
you.
to mention that one too.
Well, thank you very, sir.
I just want to add one piece that with the assistance of the Wallace Foundation, you cannot find a better group with their research, their knowledge, their expertise.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so very much, Kim and Kelly. Thank you very much. Commissioner Bloomstead and Katie Graham will provide information on Perkins 5 plan and process. Commissioner?
Yeah, so as Katie comes up, obviously, I think we had a presentation a month or two ago in the Strategic Planning Committee, probably. That committee's had nothing to do, though. So, no, and so Katie's coming back to kind of give an update to the full board on some of those efforts and an opportunity to talk about how we engage on that. Just one reminder, we'll likely have some time this summer relative to some of this conversation as well with the committee. So thank you, Katie. I messed up, by the way. I told Katie to come do this during my commissioner's update, and then we changed it on her. And then luckily she was here yesterday to work with the girls' state folks. So it all worked out just like I planned. So anyway, thanks, Katie.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's been a busy week in NCE. I appreciate Rachel and John and the commissioner and Mark who were out there. It was a great conference. It ended yesterday. We had about 625 was the last I heard attendees, which was just fantastic, mainly teachers. So it was wonderful. As I mentioned, I'm excited to be here to give you an update on our state planning process for Perkins. We've been very, very busy. And through all of the transitions our own office has gone through, we've really been able to build upon the strong foundation that we had and the vision that you all set in the strategic plan, and specifically related to career education and the opportunities each and every single student should have as they go through Nebraska education. You do have a handout, and specifically what I wanted to focus on today and what the commissioner asked is to highlight some key areas that we know we are going to need the board's input and support on. Specifically, those areas, as you see here, first and foremost is how do we make sure this plan aligns with all other NDE efforts? This doesn't need to be something else, so how do we specifically make sure it's focusing on our commitments to equity and Rule 10 as it is now and as we go through the revision of the rule. With AQuESTT, the strategic plan, other workforce development efforts in the state, and other CTE efforts. We've heard a lot about revision over a number of years and our efforts with work-based learning, so how can this plan really either strengthen those efforts or change direction if needed? Another area specifically we'll want the board's comments on are how we're going to define what a quality CTE program is. And the law requires that we select from a menu of 3 options that we will be federally held accountable for. And I listed those there. Percentage of CTE concentrators who are taking CTE dual credit while they're in high school, earning some form of post-secondary credential while in high school, or participating in work-based learning. So we're going to have to select one of those to be federally held accountable for, and of course, all of those are incorporated into our programs. Another area is thinking about statewide innovation in CTE. Our last Perkins plan had a lot of innovative ideas for how we do that. So just thinking through into our next plan, what makes sense aligning with all of those efforts to make sure that we're responsive to what's happening across the state, knowing that rural communities might have different needs or different challenges that some other areas and vice versa might have. And then finally, one of the other big decisions we have to make is how we are going to split the funds that are allocated federally and flow through NDE and distribute to secondary CTE programs and post-secondary CTE programs. Secondary, of course, would be our K-12. Post-secondary would be all of our community colleges or technical colleges, which we have 1 in the state. As you see currently, the split is 55% secondary, 45% post-secondary. Have a lot of different data points, a lot of different things we know are coming in the law that we might want to take the opportunity to think through that split and if that still makes sense to meet all of the identified needs. So as I mentioned, we've been working really hard to try to get a lot of information from our stakeholders to help inform a lot of these decisions. And you can see we, over the past couple of years, have done a number of statewide stakeholder input meetings. The audience there would be educators and business and industry primarily. We also, this past year, through a grant through Partnerships for Innovation, have been working with secondary, post-secondary alignment. So these would be mainly administrators in each respective program we've brought together to figure out, well, how aligned really are our programs? Are we creating duplication in coursework for students, or are we creating these seamless pathways for them? We also launched this week our big statewide input survey specifically related to this new legislation. We had created a list, a pretty big list of targeted individuals that were either required by law or that we knew we wanted to hear from specifically. We also reached out to everybody who attended our conference this week. A number of our partners have been distributing this survey from the Department of Labor and Economic Development, and it has also been posted on the front page of NDE's website. So in just a day, I'm happy to say that we're already over 200 responses. So I was pretty excited to see that, and I'm just going to keep pushing it out. I was just saying, if they're breathing in Nebraska and live here, they should be taking the survey because it relates to them all throughout. So as you see, the link is here. We'd love for you to take it as you are a resident, of course, and then if you'd like to share that with anyone. I'm a data person, so the more input we get, the better we'll be able to make some of these decisions. We also had a survey created and distributed specifically for students involved in our career and technical student organizations. And as you see, we had just shy of 1,000 of our participants respond. So that's going to give us some really incredible insight from the student perspective of how we're meeting their needs relative to career and technical education. We have public hearings and public comment opportunities and specific consultations already on the books, and then others that we need to align. And then, of course, as I'm here today, we want to have ongoing and open communication with the board. So if you flip over that handout, you can see a timeline from this month through when we need to submit this state plan next April. At the top, you'll see some specific areas where we've identified or can identify points where we may be able to interact more. So August, I know you guys have off next month, so August, whether that's in committee or if there's a retreat, some opportunity where we can share some of these data and get some feedback from the board might be timely. Based on that feedback, of course, we'll be continuing to revise the plan. We have a lot of activities, as you see, on the following lines going on behind the scenes, things like working with our DRE team to help set baseline performance levels, given all of the new definitions and requirements in the law. Also, we need to be consulting with the governor, having public hearings, incorporating all of that stakeholder feedback. And then in September, Nebraska has an opportunity to send a state team to work with Advanced CTE, which is one of our national policy organizations, ACTE, the Association of Career and Technical Education, and the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity, to have state team work time with all of these national experts to continue thinking through and revising our state plan. So then we'd obviously want to bring that back to the board to show you what we learned and what we've been able to think through, and then continue that ongoing process. So just thinking about the other requirements with public comment and allowing the governor at least 30 days the opportunity to sign our plan, kind of back mapping it, we really would love to have a pretty solid draft. I think we need a pretty solid draft that you are all in support of and have approved by the end of the year. And then that should give us plenty of time to get it through everyone else and make any adjustments that are needed, and then submit our strong and forward-thinking and innovative plan to the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the Feds. So that's the update. Happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Oh, I was just.
Thank you, Katie. And just one quick comment I'll make, and that's maybe on your item 4, just a reminder to my colleagues on the board that one of the big changes in Perkins 5, I mean, there's a few, but one is that funds can go down to 5th grade. And so if you think about it from that perspective, that's 2 additional years of all, school-age students and the schools and programs that could impact. And so that's why, in my view, that item number 4, what's the split, is a really important policy discussion that we have, because there have been some changes that impact that.
Thank you, yes.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment. It's a little bit, so I don't forget to tell Katie. We've had conversations about having the strategic planning committee meeting sometime in July, so you might think about that within the timeline on that front. And I figured if I said it now, I was
I can
probably.
write it down. Great.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We're moving on with our agenda. 10.1A, is there a motion to approve meetings that took place in the past that were not previously approved for Lisa Fricky?
So moved.
Second.
No? Is, any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Fricky,
Abstain.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you, Denise. Is there a motion to approve meetings that took place in the past that were not previously approved for Patsy Cove Johns?
So moved. Second.
Second by Mo. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Nichols,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Abstain.
Fricky.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you, Denise. Is there a motion to approve meetings that took place in the past that were not previously approved for John Witzel?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Denise, please call roll.
Fricky,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Witzel,
Abstain?
Tim,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you, Denise. Moving on, is there a motion to approve the future meetings participation?
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Discussion?
Not on this item.
Not on this item. Very good. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Denise, please call roll.
Wise,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Witzel.
Yes.
8 yes.
And that- Yeah, please, Rachel.
On the last item, there was supposed to be a date for me that was supposed to get in for a meeting that was previously held, and that was a May 29th date for the meeting that I had with NASB with Robert Hull. So it says none on mine and was skipped over, but that was supposed to be in there. So,
Can you make a motion?
there could be a
Just make a motion.
motion made
Yeah.
that I can't make.
Second.
I'll make a motion to provide the reimbursement for the May 29th NASB meeting with.
Why don't we just do it like this, if we make the motion, to approve a meeting that took place in the past that were not previously approved for Dr. Rachel Wise.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Denise, please call roll.
Witzel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Co-Johns,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Wise.
Abstain.
7 yes, 1 abstain.
The next items are information items and written reports for the board and for our information only. Come to adjournment. Thank you for those who tuned in to the broadcast. A work session will be held on Thursday, August the 8th at 2 p.m. and board meeting will be held on Friday, August the 9th at 9 a.m. in this room. The June State Board meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.